Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I want you to imagine a place that held literally the greatest collection of knowledge the world had ever seen. A massive hub where scientists, mathematicians, doctors, and philosophers all gathered to study the absolute secrets of the universe. Its shelves were packed with hundreds of thousands of scrolls, and some people believe it held knowledge that could have completely changed history forever. But then, one day, it was just gone. Today, we're going to uncover the true story behind the Library of Alexandria, which is, without a doubt, one of the greatest treasures humanity ever lost.
So who actually destroyed the ancient world's greatest treasure? The fate of the Library of Alexandria has become one of history's ultimate cold cases. Was it burned to the ground in a massive fire? Was it attacked by invading armies? Or did it just slowly disappear over hundreds of years? Well, stick around, because the real answer we're going to uncover today is honestly way stranger than any single fire.
Let's set the scene. More than 2,300 years ago, in the city of Alexandria, Egypt, one single building became the absolute center of learning for the entire ancient world. Obviously, we're talking about the Library of Alexandria. But it wasn't just some quiet place to store books. It was a bustling, incredibly vibrant hub where scholars actually came together to discover brand new ideas in astronomy, medicine, math, geography, engineering, and philosophy. It was this ultimate symbol of pure human curiosity, and it had a simple but super bold goal: to collect literally all the world's knowledge in one single place.
Now, what's really interesting about this number is the sheer, unimaginable scale of what they achieved. Historians believe the library held anywhere between 400,000 and 700,000 scrolls. And these weren't just local, they came from every corner of the known world. We're talking Greek texts, along with scrolls from Egypt, Persia, India, and so many other civilizations. And remember, to put this into perspective, this was at a time when every single book had to be painstakingly copied by hand. A collection like this was just completely unlike anything humanity had ever built.
Section 1. A ruthless quest for books.
So the story kicks off around 331 BC, when Alexander the Great founded the city. He never actually saw the library himself, but his dream of a grand city really inspired what happened next. After he died, Egypt fell under the rule of Ptolemy I, who started building this massive center of learning around 300 BC, and then his son, Ptolemy II, greatly expanded it. They wanted Alexandria to be the absolute smartest city in the world, because to them, knowledge was strength, so they searched everywhere for books. But here's the wild part: they didn't just politely buy them, they took them, literally. When ships rolled into Alexandria's busy harbor, officials would search the cargo holds. If they found any scrolls, they'd seize them right on the spot. Then, expert scribes would copy the scroll by hand. And here's the kicker: in a lot of cases, the library kept the original and handed the poor owner the duplicate. Just imagine boarding a ship with a super rare, prized book and leaving port with a mere copy. Pretty ruthless, right?
But the thing is, the library was way more than just a giant storage room for scrolls. It was actually part of a much larger research center called the Museum, which basically translates to Temple of the Muses. This was a place where scholars lived, ate together, debated wild ideas, and actually performed experiments side by side. Many of them even got financial support directly from the king, so they could spend literally all their time just learning, discovering, and writing new books.
And because of this incredible collaborative setup, some of history's absolute greatest minds worked there. For instance, around 300 BC, you have Euclid organizing the rules of geometry in his famous book, Elements, which, by the way, is a text we still study in schools today. Then, around 240 BC, Eratosthenes makes one of history's most jaw-dropping discoveries. Using only shadows, some careful measurements, and math, he calculated the exact size of the Earth. And his answer was incredibly close to the real value. Oh, and of course, there was Archimedes, whose groundbreaking ideas and writings were added to the growing collection too. These were amazing scientific and mathematical achievements that were centuries ahead of their time, proving that learning could absolutely unite people from all different cultures. Section 2. Investigating the usual suspects. So, for centuries, Alexandria was the undisputed knowledge capital of the world. Nothing else even came close. Which honestly makes its disappearance so much harder to wrap our heads around. Like, how did it just vanish? Well, historians have debated this for centuries, and they've lined up a few usual suspects. Let's move through the timeline and see how this builds. First up, in 48 BC, Julius Caesar gets involved in a war in Alexandria, and ships in the harbor catch fire, with flames supposedly spreading into the city. Then, between 270 and 275 AD, Emperor Aurelian fights a civil war that severely damages huge chunks of the city.
Fast forward a bit to 391 AD, and Roman Emperor Theodosius I orders pagan temples closed, leading to the destruction of the Serapeum, which likely held a smaller offshoot collection of the library's books. And finally, there's the famous story of the Arab conquest in 642 AD.
But here's where our historical cold case gets really complicated. Basically, every single suspect has an alibi. Did the main library actually survive Caesar? Well, a lot of modern historians believe Caesar's fire only burned some nearby storage buildings down by the docks, leaving the main library completely intact. And what about that super dramatic legend from 642 AD? The one that claims the conquered books were used as fuel to heat the city's bathhouses for 6 straight months? Yeah, most modern historians completely reject that entirely. The earliest versions of that story didn't even pop up until centuries after the event, so it's considered totally unreliable.
Okay, let's dive into Section 3, the true cause of destruction.
So if it wasn't Caesar, and it wasn't some infamous bathhouse fire, what's the actual verdict? The popular myth that we all know from pop culture is that the library was destroyed overnight in this giant explosive fire by some conquering villain. But the historical reality? It's actually a lot more sobering. It was a slow, tragic decline over hundreds of years due to simple neglect. Yep, there was likely no single villain at all.
Basically, what we're looking at here is death by 1,000 cuts. Over the centuries, ongoing wars slowly eroded the city's infrastructure. Funding completely dried up as money became scarce, and the later kings just stopped financially supporting the scholars. On top of that, political struggles repeatedly disrupted the whole learning environment. The buildings naturally aged, and without constant, meticulous care, those fragile papyrus scrolls simply wore out and crumbled to dust. So the library wasn't murdered in a fiery explosion, it just slowly faded away, piece by piece, until there was literally nothing left to burn.
Which brings us to Section 4, what humanity actually lost.
Now, the true explanation might not be as cinematic as a Hollywood fire, but the aftermath is incredibly heavy. Seriously, just imagine trying to understand today's world if we suddenly lost almost every book, every website, and every scientific paper. That gives you a tiny glimpse into the sheer weight of what humanity lost back then. We're talking about ancient medical treatments that were never passed down, the forgotten stories of lost civilizations, star maps we no longer understand, and groundbreaking engineering inventions that just vanished before they could ever see the light of day.
Because, as the quote goes, once a unique scroll disappeared, its ideas often disappeared forever. You have to remember, these were very often the only copies in existence, period. We know the names of so many ancient writers and philosophers, but their books, they just don't exist anymore. Entire schools of thought, brilliant works of literature, and vital scientific debates were permanently erased from human history simply because the fragile material they were written on eventually turned to dust. Ultimately, the Library of Alexandria represented humanity's absolute greatest desire to learn, discover, and preserve knowledge. And while the complete library itself is gone, archaeologists are still out there searching. Every time a new ancient manuscript is discovered in Egypt, it raises new questions and gives us a little more hope. What other lost treasures are still waiting out there beneath the sands, just ready to change history all over again? We might never have all the answers, but I want to hear what you think. If you had to bet on one theory for its downfall, the fire, the wars, or the slow fade, drop it in the comments below. Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me, and as always, keep questioning history.